It's a very good evening to you, our viewer. Thank you so much for coming through. This is Family Hour, our Thursday edition. Welcome back from the news, and here we are with Family Hour. Adrian Austin Mukalas is my name. Today, being a Thursday, our theme is leadership and governance. And because we are talking about leadership and governance, today we are talking about something very, very interesting. You know, when you get into the thing of my rights, this is my right, this is my right, this is my constitutional freedoms. So it's really a funny thing. But today we want to see how to balance individual rights and collective responsibilities. We are glad we have Diana here with us. Diana, it's been a long time.
It's been 2 weeks, just.
Yeah, only 2 weeks.
It's been 2 weeks.
Oh. It looks as if it's been a month, maybe.
No, it's been 2 weeks. I was last year right before Alabaster.
When we are talking about Alabaster, how was Alabaster?
Alabaster went very well. We went extremely well. We thank God. Thank God that Family TV came on site and was able to talk to us a bit about what was happening during the week. And we were grateful for the lives that were transformed, for the lives that were changed. I think we had one of our biggest numbers since we started again. You know, there was a dip when COVID happened. And since then, it's been a struggle getting back numbers. Traditional churches are not the same as other churches. It's a bit difficult to convince people, especially because it's also stretched into a weeks-long conference. But we were grateful this time to have a bit of numbers. I was looking at the numbers yesterday. But it's not just the numbers that count, but we were blessed by the speakers. Mrs. Aaron Kauma, alongside Reverend Esmond, Reverend Patricia. Then the panel of extraordinary women. You know, when you're planning, you don't think of them as you think of them in form as names. And you think these are just names of people that I know. And then when they come onto the ground, you realize that these are actually quite people who are big in their own right. And you need to accord them the respect that is due. So Dr. Patricia, the Chief Registrar, her worship Sarah Siolanga, we had Mrs. Susan Sibira, and as well as Reverend Lukwago. It was very good to have those ladies, and the ED of KCCA. It was amazing to have many of those ladies. Oh, we had Pastor Brian, the bigger. Now, I don't think I've seen that, the way people behave in church when a musician comes. I had not seen it until that day. I was quite shocked.
Okay.
I was shocked, pleasantly shocked, to see that we are also starstruck. Well, not me, but many of the people were quite starstruck. But it's good to have that, and also see him minister, not just perform, and lead people in worship. I thought that the conference itself went pretty well, and I'm grateful to God.
Okay. We were so careful not to go against the rules. So,
Edwin, you were invited, you didn't show up.
you told me to come and cover and specific bits.
I said you're welcome, sit at the back of the church. I didn't say
You said you're welcome to come and cover.
No, I didn't say that.
The invitation was on record. But we thank God for Alabaster. Yeah, and thank you so much for really committing yourself to that cause. I know you're now, what is it called? Healing from the fatigue.
No, it's actually, you know that when you prepare for a conference, it's like racing a racehorse. You start pretty early. So by April, we're preparing for those months for just a week's long conference. And so I think I slept my first good sleep right at the Sunday of the conference. I just slept, and I felt like I hadn't slept like that in months. And yet it's not even at a level where you'd expect this level of attention. But I'm still grateful. I think every small detail and every little effort is good because it reminds you to never despise small beginnings.
I think if you can pick it up from there, we've seen very many leaders, especially when they organize such big events like that one. After the event, some even choose to take a leave for some time, for a month, because they say we've been overdrained and we need to rest. But you didn't seem to be that person who was worked out What are some of the tips you can share with the leaders out there who organize some of these
Some of
events?
these things. First of all, good evening, viewers. It's good to be here. As always, it's also good to be back. Good evening, Adrian.
Good
Good to
evening.
see you.
Yeah.
After all these weeks.
We last met before Buster.
But it's good to be back. So some of the tips I would share to organizing events.
Yeah.
Prioritize rest as a leader.
Okay.
Prioritize rest. We take it for granted that because there are tasks involved, things that you need to get done, so you think that everything rises and falls on you as a leader. Over the years, I have learned to prioritize rest. The week leading right into the conference, I'd done enough setting of the pace of the things that we needed to do, preparation in every department. We had prepared financially, we had prepared fundraising, mobilization, prayer, worship, every department, name it, teen session, professional breakfast, we had done as much preparation. The most strenuous, of course, is the prayer department because it takes more from you than you realize. And so I have learned through the years that you need to prioritize rest as a leader and know when to step back. And so the week leading right into the conference, I stepped back and gave myself a bit of time to reflect, to rest, to figure out how to move forward. Because I knew that the moment the conference opened, it was going to be lights on for everyone. Because the months leading up to it is background work. And so there are no lights on, the camera isn't on. But the moment the day arrives, everybody now comes through. Nobody expects you to be tired.
Yeah.
They expect you to be on your best, to look the part, to dress right, to sound right, not to be unhappy, to be courteous, to be gracious, to be kind. And it's strenuous on people who have been preparing for months. Because while you're just getting onto the platform, the team is exhausted. They are exhausted beyond their capacity. Now, any leader has pushed their team to a level where they have built capacity. And so one of the things I have learned through the years, especially the week leading up to the lights on, is rest. Just rest. What can't be done will not be done at that point. And what needs to be done can get done. And you should have trained the team enough to fill in the gaps. So by the time the lights come on, don't look like you haven't spent nights sleeping. Look like it's showtime. It's time to begin because you're welcoming people. The second thing I'd say to leaders is care for the team. Care for the team of people that's working with you. In truth, you're working with many people who have given their time, their talents, their gifts to you. You've inspired people to say there's something greater. There's a vision that we need to all buy into. And so you're inviting them to that place. And you do so by caring for them. We once said here that the biggest test of leadership is leading volunteers.
Yeah.
Because you're not paying them. You're not asking, you don't have KPIs to mark them on. People can throw in the towel and walk away. And a leader needs to know that. People can throw in a towel and walk away. And so when everything is said and done, don't quote holding many towels. You need to care for people. And that's the secret for me that changed the way I do leadership. I learned to care for the team. And I also passed it on to the leader of the conference. And to see the enthusiasm and the evaluation that came in after that towards the leader was impressive. Because you finally think to yourself, I got something right. As they praise the leader of the conference, which is somebody else in this case, to tell them that thank you for caring for me. Because people are inspired to do what they do when they know that you care. I'm sure you've heard the Maya Angelou saying, which we have said time and time again, nobody cares what you know until they know that you care. And so that's something that even as Christians, you can never neglect. Don't run people into the ground. And so I said this because one of my mentors during the preparation, I went to him and I was seated with him and I was trying to explain what was happening, the season and the time and the cost and everything that we were doing to the team. And he told me, you're riding the ship like Esau. I told him, but you know me, I write like Jehu. Jehu writes like a madman. Like I write like a madman. What is new? He said, don't ride the ship like Esau. Care for the ship like Jacob did. Where Jacob and Esau meet. And then Esau says, let's proceed further. And Jacob says, the sheep are tired. We can't let them go further than this. And so he sort of opened my mind to the fact that you may have programs set in place, but when people get tired, don't continue driving them forward. Do your best to care for them. Know when to pull back. You may have the full throttle as the leader to keep going, but know when your team is exhausted and when you need to give them grace to just be where you are, to just be who they are. Because you've built capacity over the years. They are just coming onto the platform. So to put 20-something years in what people have done for 3 years is not fair to them. And so sometimes I tend to take on a bit much and a lot, but I've also realized that capacity for me has grown over the years. And so I can't ask somebody who has done this for 5 or so years to have the same capacity.
Wow, these are indeed lessons. These are indeed lessons, and a leader out there, you shouldn't struggle much. At the end of the day, the battle isn't yours.
No, it's not. No, the people are God's. And I think that's something we need to learn, that these are God's people, they're not yours. These are God's children in the end. And so respect them and honor them the way that he does. God values people above anything else. So you need to learn to value what God values. If he values people above everything else, it would be wrong for you to value program and procedure above everything else. And so if someone for some reason is breaking down, it's incumbent upon you as a leader to find a way to attend to that, but also still go for it. Because you have to, a leader carries the heart of God, and you have to deliver the heart of God to his people and find a way. And so being in step with the Spirit, you realize that regardless of what happens, this is God's program, this is God's agenda, but they're also God's people.
Okay. Well, this has given us actually a very good foundation of our discussion today. We are looking at balancing individual rights and collective responsibilities. There's something you say that there's nothing hard as dealing with volunteers. But anyway, let us start from rights, from your low background.
Thank you for putting me on the spot.
It wasn't an intended one, but starting from there, in a workspace, what should we consider as one's individual rights in a workspace?
First of all, individual rights are also inherently given by the law and they are known even before the law comes into existence. That you have a right to breathe. You have a right to water. You have a right to all these things. There are things that give you sustenance and give you a way for a kind of life that is suitable for you as a human being, and the kind of life that distinguishes you from anything else. And so rights usually are defined by the Constitution and by law. And so you'll have also institutions defining rights for you and what accrues to an individual as opposed to what accrues to a collective group of people. That means what is yours as Edwin's as opposed to what is Edwin and everybody else's right. And so what you call individual rights are things where I must enjoy that by virtue of the fact that I am a human being. And so my right to water, my right to life, my right to, and everything involved in life. When I say a right to life, it involves things like education, as oxygen, all those things that make you a human being or make you somebody that's recognized in society. And so that's what individual rights are. In terms of a workspace, you know, when you come into a workspace, you do have your individual rights.
Yes.
The right to negotiate and bargain for your salary, the right to health care, many times where you have developed nations, the right to freedom of speech, though that freedom, as everybody else's freedom, is curtailed. There are things you can say, there are things that you can't say. The right to a clean and healthy, sanitable place, all those things are rights that ought to be enjoyed by you because they are enshrined in the Constitution of Uganda. The Constitution gives you the right to all these different freedoms, what you call the chapter for the Bill of Rights. So it gives you all those individual rights that you exercise by virtue of the fact that you are a human being. And so when you go into a workspace, they're not stripped away from you because they say, we believe in this. Because, again, all rights are enshrined in some form of law, and therefore even the institution is governed by some form of law, the Constitution being above everything else. But even the Employment Act, the Land Act, every other act that affects you as a human being possesses, gives you those rights. They can't be stripped away from you. So in a workspace, that's what it looks like. You have your right to express yourself. Of course, you have to be very cautious about what you do. It's similar to the nation.
You say that there's something, there are things you should say and things you should not say. Yeah. For example?
So the rights are given to everybody, but they can be curtailed. Yeah. If your right affects my right, then your right has to be curtailed. There's a famous case on Facebook, I think it's Facebook, where somebody, what's the code name, for a long time was writing propaganda or writing things on Facebook for a long time. And so they sought to find out who that person was, and so they brought to Facebook to find out who that person was, because their name wasn't showing on Facebook. And so it goes into the discussion, the right to life, right to freedom of speech, right to all those things. And the judge later on discusses what is entailed in the right in those different rights. And so the right to free speech, the right to freedom of expression, the right to associate, all those rights were there. But the question was, does the expression or enjoyment of that right infringe on the right of somebody else? As much as you want to say something, Adrian, you can't say everything if it infringes on my right. Now, it's not the same as being using vulgar language or that one just means you're poorly brought up. Yeah? We're not talking about that. But you can see the recent uproar on Twitter, which became the big social media interaction space, is that people who were naturally quiet, in and of themselves, who perhaps society had trained us to speak like that, have recently changed the way that they speak. Behind a computer, everybody thinks they are safe, and so they can write what they want to write. Now, of course, that doesn't excuse people who are vulgar and people who just, for some reason, attack the morality of others. There's a school of thought, of course. There are some people who believe that's okay and other people are not. Based on our faith and belief, it's a bit of a hard press for us to accept. But there are things that you can say. For example, you can share your view on government without being offensive. You have the right to share your view on the way public policies are being done. You have the right to share your view on the way a matter has been handled, a debate that's happening in Parliament, a matter of public interest such as corruption. You have the right to speak about that because it's called, you are protected. Your freedom of speech is protected. Now, there is that place where you cross the line. There are some things you can't say because the law says it offends the person of the president or it offends a certain office or whatever you're saying leads to an uprising. So if I say something that causes people to go on the street now and begin to riot, then my freedom of speech is affecting others. Because as much as I am very impassionate, or I have so much passion about the way things are done, but if I see it using the platform that I have, and perhaps I am an influencer, and I make a comment that causes people to go on the street and begin to demonstrate or throw something and attack businesses, and because you see, you're not just, your freedom of speech is causing others to suffer. And so you as the leader needs to know that you're very responsible for the platform that you have been given, the influence that you have been given. Don't use it to take down a society. If it doesn't collectively build everyone, it doesn't drive us towards building something, your freedom of speech has to be curtailed. So go to your home and have your private discussion. Shout at a wall if you can. Do something. But even as you speak, always make sure that your speech, even your criticism, is redemptive in nature. It should inspire people towards good. Now, of course, the thin line is inspiring people to come and do a peaceful protest, yeah, as opposed to a violent protest. But you can't control, many times, at least not in our country, it's hard to control what a protest looks like. It will always be infiltrated and adulterated by different people who have their own agenda. Similar to every movement in life, it starts off well, but people come in with their own agenda, and it's adulterated, it's militarized, and when that happens, what you're doing is creating chaos. And so your freedom of speech should not drive the society down because you are so convinced about your ideas. So a leader who's not responsible enough and does not think that their words will lead to a certain action means that their freedom of speech also can be curtailed.
We've had instances or things to do with sit-down strike. People show up at work, at a workplace, but they choose not to do any kind of work. And maybe, like you say, that before you know, some have, maybe they're expressing their injustice towards a particular boss or leader. Then before you know, people are even attacking his office or doing all these sorts of what. So how is that now, how is that considered in the law?
So, there's a union, other people in other countries and other places, even here, there are people who join unions, join bodies that also advocate for their rights. Yeah, and so usually a strike is called by the union people. You have a right to protest. You have a right to protest. Your protesting can be sit down, as you have expressed. Your protesting can be not sure. We laid down our tools. There's a time when Uganda Law Society laid down their tools, decided not to show up to courts, and that meant that they could not produce people who were in prison to court because there were either no lawyers to defend them, and so the courts got quite congested. Right now they are absolutely congested beyond capacity, but it got worse. It got worse with lawyers putting down their tools. So it means the criminal system was hampered because some of those cases, especially capital offenses, require that there's a lawyer present. Capital offenses means things in the high court, things specifically to do with murder, aggravated robbery, aggravated defilement, rape, all those things. So if something like that happens and the lawyers put down their tools, then what it was saying is that we're objecting to being treated like this as a temple of justice, as people. And so it is our right to put down our tools. Yeah, it's our right. You can see medical students currently striking because the market is infested is the wrong word. The market is congested. Yeah, congested with quite a number of people there because of the way they liberalized education, and so many people are offering medical and offering a medical degree, and so you have a level of interns that the government cannot contain, cannot send to different places. And so you have people like that seated for me at church because they're wondering what next. I have spent 5 years in school and I'm supposed to be going over to internship, but I can't because government has not deployed us. Government has not deployed because of the number of people that have come up. See, the economy hasn't increased, say, in the last couple of years to take on certain professions. That story is not different for lawyers. It's not different for other professions. In truth, the market is congested. Yeah, that's just the reality of where we are right now. And so I'm just giving examples of what those rights to protest look like. So you have the medical students on strike. You've had the lawyers lay down their tools. You have people coming and sitting in premises, and it is within their right to do so. Now, as you do that, the hope is that it builds pressure on the system to come and let us negotiate. And I've even skipped the easiest one, Casita, when they closed downtown and closed their shops. And each of us is affected, whether we think about it or not. But we are affected. It's not just the GDP. It's me who wanted my hair plaited, was calling somebody, she could not find the hair because she was locked up, because the shops were locked up. And so the person who was planning to open their shop for them, they were threatening to beat them. And so you have all those things happening. You see, government did not now say, what you're doing is wrong, because they recognize that is within their right to protest, to set down. Nobody stops those ones. But they are peaceful ways of placing pressure to let your request be made known so that it can be answered. Very different from when it turns to a violent protest. In your example, you said they sit down and then they decide.
They see this leader who is the problem, who is the reason they are striking, and then they want to crush him.
Human beings. You know, we're all human beings at the end of the day. We each have that. We all have capacity to go wild. Believe me, we all have the capacity. Even the quietest person you know has the capacity to kill and erupt. It's in each of us. Nobody is exempt. It's just that some have tamed it more than others. And some have worked on themselves more than others. But given the right circumstances and given the right places, that nature in us will arise. And it will cause us to react in the same way. The reason you can't relate to Casita, to the medical students, to the factory workers is because you're not in that position. But their family member can. Everyone else involved in that situation can relate. And so the truth is that if someone takes away from the peaceful protest and begins to make it a violent protest, you're crossing the line. It's no longer peaceful. You actually no longer enjoy the right to freedom of association because you have turned it into a dangerous situation. Now, in your trying to express yourself, when you break a door, shatter property, what you are doing in that moment is making a business collapse. There's a person on the other side who is also being affected by what you're doing. But more than that, you're putting people's lives in danger. The people who are with you in the protest and those who are inside. And the right of life is non-derogable. It's the one right, it's that and the right for freedom from torture. Those rights cannot be dealt away with. So when you change from just associating and you begin to you begin to put people's lives in danger, you're now breaching another right. At that point in time, you need to be curtailed.
Oh, wow. Well, there's a lot that we are learning. Today, we are learning more about the law. But we are taking a short commercial break. When we return, we want now to see how can the two be balanced, the individual rights, but also the collective responsibility without one looking at the other as being overwrapped or overheaded. We are taking a short commercial break. We shall be right back.